In Jesus' letter to the church in Pergamum, which is in Turkey, he said, I know where you live, where Satan's throne is. Satan's throne, is a pretty big deal. Why aren't more people talking about this? Well, we are, and we're starting right now. So what is it about Turkey 2023? Why is that year special? 2 reasons. First, it's the 100th anniversary of the Lausanne Treaty. In this previous video, we discussed how the treaty is likely linked to the creation of the Gog-Magog alliance and the formation of a caliphate, although there is nothing in the treaty that says it expires. Turkey's President Erdogan, the pseudo-dictator of Turkey, is pushing the narrative that it will expire in 2023 and the narrative that it will be time to recreate the Ottoman Empire that treaty dissolved. Second, it would also be the perfect time for Satan's throne to be set back up in Turkey. You need to have this on your spiritual radar. We all do. So today, let's take a deep dive into Jesus' letter to Pergamum and what the throne of Satan was and might still be, and also how it was copied by Nazi Germany and even a U.S. president, and why 2023 is the proposed date for it to be used again. Fascinating stuff. Jesus' instructions to the church of Pergamum starts like this. I know where you dwell, where Satan's throne is. And you hold fast to my name and did not deny my faith, even in the days of Antipas, my witness, my faithful one, who was killed among you, where Satan dwells. So the death of the martyr Antipas in the 1st century is a clue to where Satan dwells. Who was this Antipas? Well, we don't know for sure. There is a lot of conjecture, however, that he was the bishop of Pergamum, and that he was killed on the altar of Zeus that used to be in that city. This makes sense, as Jesus' letter links Satan's throne with the spot where he dwells and the spot where Antipas was murdered. And although the altar of Zeus isn't in Turkey anymore, it has survived till this day. It's also conjectured that the death of Antipas may have been a human sacrifice. These were usually performed on people who refused to worship the Roman emperor. They were thought to have been offered inside a large bronze bull, which was heated with fire. When the person had been burned to death, the bones were carved into beads for bracelets to be worn by the pagan priests. These bone bracelets were considered to be holy objects by the pagan Romans. The altar of Zeus is absolutely massive, over 100 feet wide and deep. And the stairway alone that leads up to the altar is over 60 feet high. The base is decorated with sculptures showing a battle between giants and the Olympic gods. Giants are an interesting decoration given the association with them and fallen angels, and I would love your thoughts in the comments about what this might mean. Now that's the ancient history of the altar. In 1878, the German engineer Karl Humann started excavations and took the altar stone by stone back to Berlin. But it was too large to fit any existing museum, and it had to have its own museum built just to house it. The famous Ishtar Gate from ancient Babylon is also housed in that same museum. The Berlin Museum opened in 1930, and the altar of Zeus caught the eye of Germany's brand new chancellor, Adolf Hitler, who had a replica of it built. Hitler used it for his political rallies and added something the ancient Pergamum residents never dreamed of. He added 150 searchlights aimed up into the sky. He called it the Cathedral of Light. In combination with the torchlight parades his followers would stage, it took the appearance of a pagan worship service. Hitler placed his own podium for speaking at the exact location where the human sacrifices had taken place in the bronze bull. This time, however, the sacrifices took place in concentration camps in the form of 10 million Jews and Christians. We now know this as the Holocaust. Interestingly, that term Holocaust means holy burnt sacrifice, just like Antipas was back in the first century. Now, fast forward to 2008 and the USA Democratic National Convention. The presidential candidate that year, Barack Obama, had his stage made to look just like the Altar of Zeus as well. Although Obama did not continue to utilize the altar motif throughout the tenure of his office, like Hitler did, it was no accident that he chose to link the pagan past in the same way as Hitler. His Holocaust probably could be considered the murder of millions of babies through abortion, although he isn't the only U.S. president who is guilty of this sin. Which brings us to 2014. Tayyip Erdogan, president of Turkey, began to earnestly request the altar be returned to Turkey, which on the surface is completely reasonable, as it was originally a Turkish artifact. Then something strange happened. The exhibit was closed to the public. Officially, they said it was for restoration. They said it would take 5 years. And then, when the 5 years expired, which was in 2019, we were told it would take another 4 years, expiring in the year 2023. Yes, let that sink in, 2023. That's the exact year Erdogan has been claiming the Lausanne Treaty will expire, and that many think he will attempt to use as an excuse to resurrect the Caliphate. Does this mean the Altar of Zeus, Satan's throne, will be returned to Turkey that year? Well, we don't know, but it certainly seems possible, even likely. And the beast, which I saw, was like a leopard, and his feet were like those of a bear, and his mouth like the mouth of a lion. And the dragon gave him his power and his throne and great authority. I saw one of his heads as if it had been slain, and his fatal wound was healed. And the whole earth was amazed and followed after the beast. This classic verse speaks of Satan's throne being given to the eventual beast empire and the healing of the head of the beast. Now, is Erdogan going to utilize this throne of Satan in the same way that Hitler did in the past? It remains to be seen. As we discussed in the previous video, the healing of the head of the beast is likely the restoration of the Caliphate. All Muslims worldwide would then pledge their allegiance to the Caliph of any new Caliphate. So this might fulfill the whole world following after the beast passage as well. So keeping our eyes on this altar of Zeus around this time is what we all should do. Now, the throne of Satan was involved in human sacrifice back in the first century, and Hitler's copy of it certainly seemed to be associated with the Holocaust, the sacrifice of 10 million Christians and Jews. So what type of human sacrifice will be associated with this altar in the future? Possibly the Great Tribulation, the persecution of God's people worldwide. That is definitely something worth keeping our eyes on. Now, what else does this letter to Pergamum tell us about this time? As we have indicated throughout this entire series on the letters to the 7 churches, we believe each letter is to the one and only church of Jesus Christ as it overcomes and endures the seals. The first letter to Ephesus is about identifying false prophets, which is what the first seal is about. The second letter is about the beginning of persecution. This third letter to Pergamum has a reference to food. The fourth letter mentions the beginning of the Great Tribulation, just like the fourth seal. The fifth church, Sardis, speaks about the martyrs killed during the Great Tribulation, just like the fifth seal. And the sixth letter, Philadelphia, which you're probably familiar with, speaks of the rapture. The rapture that follows the sixth seal. The seventh seal is the wrath of God. And the seventh letter to Laodicea is about those who are left behind by the rapture to endure the wrath of God. Let's look at this letter in more detail. Here are some of Jesus' instructions. But I have a few things against you, because you have there some who hold to the teaching of Balaam, who kept teaching Balak to put a stumbling block before the sons of Israel, to eat things sacrificed to idols, and to commit acts of immorality. So you also have some who in the same way hold to the teaching of the Nicolaitans. We have theorized that the letter to Pergamum, the third letter in a sequence, is related to the third seal of Revelation. The third seal in Revelation 6, 5-6 is about the fixing of prices of grain, and by reference to Matthew 24, to famine. Both are food-related items, and sure enough, this letter to Pergamum speaks of food as well. In this case, eating food sacrificed to idols. Now the next letter to Thyatira also speaks of this term, food sacrificed to idols. What does this mean? Now in 1 Corinthians, Paul speaks of this same term, things sacrificed to idols. The things which the Gentiles sacrifice, they sacrifice to demons and not to God. I do not want you to become sharers in demons. You cannot drink the cup of the Lord and the cup of demons. You cannot partake of the table of the Lord and the table of demons. What might this food be in the future? What does Revelation tell us about some type of demonic food? And he causes all, the small and the great, and the rich and the poor, and the freemen and the slaves, to be given a mark on their right hand or on their forehead, so that no one will be able to buy or to sell, except for the one who has the mark, either the name of the beast or the number of his name. Revelation 13, 16-17. Although this doesn't mention food directly, obviously food will be a major component of what someone without the mark can't buy. So is the mark of the beast the way those in the end times will eat food sacrificed to idols? Demonic food. It seems that's most likely to me. The passage also mentions the committing of acts of sexual immorality. These two things, eating food linked to demons and sexual immorality, are the two things the letter of Pergamum calls the teaching of the Nicolaitans. And these are the two things which are also called in the next letter, the letter to Thyatira, the teaching of Jezebel. Jesus then promises a couple things to those who overcome this teaching. He who has an ear, let him hear what the Spirit says to the churches. To him who overcomes, to him I will give some of the hidden manna, and I will give him a white stone, and a new name written on the stone which no one knows but he who receives it. This promise of hidden manna is interesting if this letter truly is about the mark of the beast and not being able to buy or sell or obtain food. Is Jesus going to give the churches hidden manna? So does Jesus provide hidden food to those refusing the mark? Well, I don't know. It's a pretty veiled prophecy, but it seems like that might be possible. In terms of the white stone with a new name written on the stone, this has puzzled scholars for ages. In Revelation 19:12, Jesus himself has a name written on him that no one else knows when he rides that white horse to Armageddon. So there's a great deal of similarity here. A white horse, white stone, both having names no one knows except the individual. God has always given people new names. He renamed Abram, Abraham, Sarai, Sarah, and Simon he renamed Peter. This seems to indicate a new level of relationship to God. But why write it on a white stone? Well, Islam has a black stone set in the Kaaba. There are those, myself included, that think this stone may be included in the image of the beast. The white stone, then, may be in contrast to Islam's black stone. The other aspect of this letter is that it twice mentions the sword coming out of Jesus' mouth. Therefore repent, or else I am coming to you quickly, and I will make war against them with the sword of my mouth. Revelation 2:16. This is the same sword Jesus has coming out of his mouth in Revelation 19:15, when he rides that white horse to Armageddon. Symbolically, Jesus is telling us that those who don't repent will be on the wrong end of that glorious day, and Jesus will be fighting against them. Again, showing this is absolutely an end-time letter. Now, we spoke of Turkey 2023. Does this mean that the third seal will break in that particular year? No, that's not what we mean at all. We somewhat suspect that the Altar of Zeus will return to Turkey that year based on the coincidence of the repair of the altar and Erdogan's desire for a caliphate occurring on that same year. I can absolutely see Erdogan making speeches from that Turkish landmark just like Hitler did. It's just the kind of thing an egomaniac would do. However, this doesn't mean the third seal will open that year, although it might. Now, the other question you are probably asking, the elephant in the room question, is Erdogan the Antichrist? After all, we've been talking about seals opening. But I don't think so. I think Erdogan is the predecessor to the Antichrist. The Bible seems to discuss how all this might go down and where the Antichrist arises. If you want to keep watching, well, click right here and see this very popular video from last year. Where does the Antichrist come from? Till then, this is Nelson, and I'll see you there.